But the other side to it as well is if I want to get things done for Nepean, I got to work with the government. They're the ones with the money and the power to make it happen. So I will work with them, right? I have voted with them on certain bills. I have voted against many of their bills. But I'm always willing to work together, to put forward amendments, change legislation, so it can be as good as it can for Ontarians. Because if the government is doing well, then that's good for Ontario. So that's where I really don't care about partisanship. I just want us to get things done that are actually going to improve people's lives, because that's the job of government.
Welcome to the VCalla Show, presented by CrossCut Digital Strategies.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the VCalla Show, presented by CrossCut Digital Strategies. I'm Vincenzo, Calla, creator of VCalla Productions, and today I'm here with Tyler Watt, the Member of Provincial Parliament for Nepean. Thank you for having me in your office. It's great to be here, my Member of Provincial Parliament here in Barrhaven in Nepean. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad that we finally have the opportunity to do this. I'm a big fan of your work, and I'm just excited for the opportunity.
Thank you. It's been great to, we've been wanting to do this for about a year now. So I'm glad we finally got the time to sit down, time that worked for all of us. It's great to be here, great to have a good conversation about local issues, Queen's Park, and your first year as a member of provincial parliament, first year in a bit. So great to have you here. Also the Liberal critic for training colleges and university and long-term care. So busy plate you have. And I'm excited to dive right into all of these issues.
Let's do it.
All right, so I want to get right into it.
Sure.
This is not an interview that I ever thought that we'd be sitting down to do. I've been able to get to know you over the past year. It's no secret that we used to be on different camps, but now we've come together and formed a really good friendship. I'm very happy to be here with you. It's been a year since you were elected. We've been at a lot of the same community events. What has that first year been like?
It's been incredible. Seriously, this has been the most fun I've ever had. It's truly an honor and a privilege to have the confidence of the people of Nepean and put me in this role. And it's been really special, and I've learned a lot. It was definitely a steep learning curve, going from working bedside at the hospital to an early winter election and then winning and, going to Queen's Park and learning how to become an MPP. And there's no guidebook, by the way. Like, you kind of start fresh and figure it out on your own. I've been very lucky, though, to have really supportive colleagues, especially here in Ottawa. We have a couple other caucus members that are here who have been fantastic mentors to me. But being a year and a half now into the role, I feel like I've really found my flow, and I'm really proud of where our office is today. The fact that we're actually helping people, it really means the world. And I want to comment on the different camps. So that's been one of my favorite things as well about this, is that I get to speak with so many different people with different views, different opinions, but really being able to work on those relationships and come together. I think now more than ever, it's really important that we are united, especially, with everything going on down south. But it's been really great to have that opportunity to speak with people in different camps, and they learn I'm a normal person, but also I get to learn from them. And that's how I grow and become a better MPP and representative for Nepean.
Well, and you know what? It's so true. We've seen over the past year a coming together of sorts, especially I think hyper local here in Nepean because, and we're going to talk about Prime Minister Carney being our local MP, but I think seeing the way that everybody has come together, a good friend of mine said that he crossed the floor to the middle, and I think that's where most Canadians are right now. We see how it is in the States. We don't want that. We came together, a strong Nepean, strong Ontario, strong Canada, and we're all working together because that's the way it really is, and that's the way it is, yes, on the floor of the legislature, but in the community. Being able to work with all sorts of people and really taking a reality check and saying partisanship is nothing. It's about serving the people of Nepean, Ontario, whatever riding you represent. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the earliest examples that I saw this was actually during the trucker convoy. So this was during the first time I ran in 2022. And at that point, I was like, what is going on in our world? You know, like it seems like we're so divided. You see things online that are just so nasty and radical. And then with the takeover of downtown Ottawa, I was just like, oh my God, like what's going on? But because it was during the election, I was still knocking on doors in Nepean, and that gave me hope again because like the super majority of people, regardless of where they fall on the political spectrum, are decent, good people who truly just want the best for their families and their community. Perhaps we disagree on what that looks like or the pathway on how to get there, but people are generally really kind here, and especially in Nepean. Like I hear stories from other ridings, and I'm like, I've never experienced that here. You know, I rarely got yelled at the door, and I can't say the same for some of my colleagues. So I think Nepean is really special in that regard. But certainly since Trump, we have seen a greater appreciation for our country, and I'm so happy that we're there again. Right? There was a while where it was like, you know, you know, I don't know. There was a while where it wasn't that.
Yeah.
And then now I see Canadian flags everywhere, right? I see them on cars, I see them on houses. People are like really proud to be Canadian and to live in this country. And I love that so much. And I think that Trump has inadvertently helped create that here.
Exactly. You know, we're united, we're strong, we're better together. And it's so great to see that permeated through every single thing that you do. Might be even more, you know, hyper, what's the word? Even more apparent in Nepean because of where we stand in the heart of the nation's capital. Prime Minister is our MP, you know, people are public servants here and they work for the federal government, and there's this extreme sort of view of we are proud to be Canadian, and that is such a good thing, and it's so nice to see. I want to get back to this later, but back to, you know, you mentioned nursing. You're a registered nurse, you were working at the Queensway Carleton until you were elected. You went from there down the road to a constituency office and you became an MPP. What was that like to go from that type of intensive job to another type of intensive job?
Well, it's interesting. I like to joke about how I went from the most trusted profession to the least trusted profession. But nursing really prepared me for this. The amount of transferable skills that I brought into the political world from nursing has been really advantageous for myself, right? I'm used to talking to strangers. I'm used to quickly developing relationships with people, right? Every shift that I work, I may have 6 to, you know, 8, 9, 10 patients that I have never met before. And I walk into their room, and within 5 minutes, it's my goal to develop a therapeutic nurse-patient relationship with them so I can provide the best type of care that I can. And a lot of that involves active listening, compassion, kindness, being an advocate, and all of those things I think have translated into what I do here. So when I knock on a stranger's door to talk about the worst thing to a lot of people, which is politics, I think it really helped in that regard because I was able to get past kind of that uncomfortableness that maybe a lot of people feel, and truly sell myself as someone that just cares about this writing. And I think that that really resonated during the election. Otherwise, you know, I'm used to really long hours. I actually miss being on my feet. I'll say one of my least favorite things, and I don't have very many things I don't like about this job, but it's the amount of sitting I have to do. I'm used to being on my feet 12, 16 hours a shift, get all my steps in. And in this role, it's a lot of sitting, right? Especially like when I'm in house duty, I have to get up like every 30 minutes and like stretch my legs because I can't stand sitting there. But yeah, it's been like a lot of change, but nothing that's been nothing that's been difficult to learn and adapt to. And there's so many similarities between nursing and this role.
Well, it's so interesting. You know, I think you've been back on official visits to the place where you used to work as a nurse.
I still work there.
And you still work there,
Yeah.
and that's what I wanted to bring
Yeah.
up. What is that like? The first time I think I ever saw that was during the pandemic when conservative minister Natalia Kuzendova,
Yeah.
who used to work in long-term care, went back. I'm like, I don't know if she was a minister at that point, but I'm like, she's a sitting member of provincial parliament. She went back, and then I saw you did the same thing. What is that like? People might have seen that post, said, really? I didn't know you could do that. What is that like as the MPP, but you still go back sometimes? What's that like?
I love it because I don't have to be a politician, right? I just get to be a nurse. My nursing is my first career that I loved. Once a nurse, always a nurse, and to be able to go back in for a 12-hour shift, and it's like riding a bike. I don't do it as often as I would love to because this MPP job is quite busy. But I do try to go back, like once or twice a month when we're not sitting.
Yeah.
When we're sitting at Queen's Park, it's a no-go. I tried that and I was just burning myself out. But it's good. It's a lot of fun. I love it.
Well, I want to talk now about that transition you talked about before. You said there's no guidebook. You were just you were working, and then the snap election was called. You had been preparing for a while, and I think we all kind of knew it was coming, but it was still a snap election. You get elected, and here you are as a new member of provincial parliament taking over a riding, and you have all these responsibilities. The local part I want to talk about first, to set up those things like a constituency office. You took over Lisa McLeod's old constituency office, so the space was here. It's on a bus line, but you still had to hire all new staff, order all the furniture, like just all those little things. What is it like as a new member to get yourself set up with staff, with an office, with knowing all the issues, developing your stakeholders, everything? What is that like? That first, when I say first 100 days.
It's like drinking out of a fire hose and extremely overwhelming. Especially, I've never been a boss before, right? I've always been part of a team. I'm still a part of a team, obviously, but in my nursing career, I was more so just responsible for myself and my patients. I was often charge nurse as well, so used to at least supervising a team. But in terms of, I've never hired someone before. I didn't know there was just, you kind of just learn trial by fire, I suppose. But because of that experience and how overwhelming it was, and going to the legislation session started very quickly, so I couldn't be here. I've actually am in the middle of creating a guidebook for new MPPs that I will share with any new MPP who wants it, regardless of what party they're from, just so they don't have to go through some of the trial and tribulations that I did. Because at the end of the day, this office is so important, especially for constituents, and I would like to see a greater transition and continuity between offices, right? Between members. I did not have that. And I know many people who did not have that as well. So, and it's at the detriment to our constituents, right? So that's something that I'm hoping to get out, by the next election, whenever that happens, just so that way people are a little bit more supported.
Well, and you know what? It's such an interesting thing. It's those little things, all the little things, and all the big things too. And being able to see how that happens, and you as a new member, great idea to build a guidebook because, like you said, there is none, and it's very fast paced. Legislature days are long, especially after an election. They're trying to pass all this legislation, and it can become a lot. So it's It definitely is really interesting to see how that happens. Now, I want to talk about the local issues right now, about the city of Nepean. That's what I said. About the riding of Nepean, former city, but about being the MPP here. You're one of, well, I guess, 5 local officials in Nepean, because there's the federal MP, there's yourself, and there's actually 4 city councilors, so you're one of 6. And like you said, you're working with other offices. You probably get many phone calls a week if somebody says, why isn't my garbage picked up? You're like, that's David Hill's issue, or that's Wilson Lowe's issue, or Sean Devine, or whoever, right? And then you also get, I need help with an immigration issue. Well, that's Prime Minister Carney's constit office. What is that like to have developed those relationships with the other offices in addition to setting up your own constituency office. You know, you have a lot of local politicians, colleagues that you have to work with. What is that like? And we'll get to actually dealing with the Prime Minister after, but on a local level.
It's been great, to be honest. Like, I'm so lucky to have such great colleagues, you know, municipally and federally. And we work really well together. And because at the end of the day, our goal is to help out our constituents. And a lot of that overlaps, right? So, yes, we do get, you know, calls and emails that are about maybe a municipal issue or federal issue. But instead of us just passing it on, like, we will connect them to the appropriate office to make sure that, again, that continuity of care is still there. And I just love that we have very fierce advocates on every level of government that are here to represent Nepean. I learn a lot from our city councilors as well, because that hyper-local ground game is what informs me and what I'm advocating for at Queen's Park on a provincial level. And that's where I want to find out, you know, beyond advocacy, what can I do to help make sure those things are happening, right? So, you know, like the Barnesdale interchange, the Queensway Carleton Hospital emergency room expansion, the Green Bank realignment, the Ottawa LRT, you know, coming to Barrhaven hopefully in my lifetime, right? Like there's so all those things we can work together and try to make those things happen through whatever lever and level of government that we can.
Well, and Nepean in the past 4 years has changed a lot, you know? From where we were 4 years ago today, every single representative was different. Every single city councilor that's here today was elected in the last election. You were elected last year. Prime Minister Carney was elected as the member for Nepean last year. So there's been a real renewal in different sort of set of people. So you've all been learning over time. And I think that's what it is. It's about figuring out how you can best serve the constituents of Nepean on every level, and building out those relationships and getting to some of those issues, like you were saying. Now, I want to talk about this thing I've been teasing, Prime Minister Carney. I don't think any of us were expecting a year and a half ago that we'd have such a rapid turnover of Prime Minister, a Liberal Prime Minister. Let's be honest. I don't think anybody was expecting the way things happen. And then he came in, he chose Nepean, he ran in Nepean, became the member for Nepean, all within a matter of 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's been so cool because I've met him a few times. Obviously, as the MPP, you've met him a lot. What is that like to have the Prime Minister of Canada as your federal counterpart?
It's really cool. It's definitely like, a great icebreaker. You know, like, name a fun fact about you. It's like, oh, the Prime Minister is the MP of my riding, right? It's been really cool. It's really neat, and I have to pinch myself sometimes that, you know, I do get to see him a lot more than most. It's really cool to have him out at events here in Barrhaven and Nepean, and yeah, I don't know what else to say apart from the fact that it's really cool.
Well, and you know what is so interesting, because what really hit me was he was at Canada Day last year, he was at Canada Day this year, and then I've seen him a few times at other events. And what was so interesting is that he's the Prime Minister of Canada. He's all over the world. You know, he's sitting in the Oval Office one day, he's sitting at the G7 another day. But at Canada Day, people were going up to him as their MP.
Yeah.
Ask him, I have this problem. It didn't matter that he was the Prime Minister. They went to him as their MP, and he was helping them as their MP. So I think it's really interesting that at the end of the day, and he has a great staff, I've met his staff, and it's great. So it's so cool to be able to see that, and especially yourself, you have his picture on the behind you, just like I have a few pictures of myself with him on my shelf behind me at home. So that's really cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Well, this one, I'm in a winter coat, so that must have been. Oh, I'm wearing a federal pin there, so that must have been during their election.
Yeah.
It all kind of blurs together because our election, the early winter election, was started in January, ended in February, and then when was the federal one?
I think it was 2 weeks later.
2 weeks later. So
Yeah,
I'm
it started.
technically his senior.
Yeah, you are by about a month after he's sworn in.
Yeah. No, it's really cool, and it's fun to pick his brain too, right? He's a very, very smart guy. And to have him in our riding it's cool. I still remember like when there was rumors about like which riding will he run in, and then I don't know if it was his staff or him, but anyways, followed me on Twitter, and I was like, what did we do? And
expecting an angry DM.
And then 3 days later they announced Nepean.
So cool.
It was
really cool. And like you said, all the blur, it all happened so quick.
Yeah.
All happened so quick. Let's move on to Queen's Park in Toronto life, because that's the other half of your job. Big part of your job.
Maybe a third.
Probably a third. If we're looking by the calendar, about a third. On paper, it's half your job.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you have your events in Nepean, you represent the people of Nepean, but then at Queen's Park, you're the representative of Nepean. You're also the Liberal critic. You are in a caucus of 14 now?
Yeah, small but mighty.
Small but mighty, but bigger than it was.
Yeah.
So you have a fairly big role as opposed to a member who might be a caucus of 30 or 70, right? So you're a very vocal voice that we see there. What has that been like to sort of figure out Toronto and go to Queen's Park into that chamber, which is a lot smaller than it looks on TV. It
is, yeah, I know.
It's very small in person.
Yeah.
But what was that like to just walk in those doors into this historic building and say, I am one of the few hundred people on that wall that have ever served as a member of provincial parliament in Ontario?
It's incredible. And to be honest, so every day that I walk to Queen's Park, I enter through the main doors, so I can take in the absolute beauty and history of this building and remind myself how lucky I am and just what an honor it is to be there. And I don't take my responsibility lightly as MPP. Like, I'm there to represent the people of Nepean. I bring up Nepean as often as humanly possible. And everything that I do there, everything that I advocate for is through the lens of my constituents here. Of course, I have my own values and opinions, but what I do there is always informed by my constituents. So if they feel a certain way about this, or they want to hear more about this issue, those are the things that I bring up there. That's why I bring up the Barnesdale interchange constantly, right? That's why I bring up the Queensway Carleton Hospital, and a lot of the issues that we are facing here in the riding. That's what I'm there to do. I'm there to represent and be their voice. So I'm always trying to learn, right? Like right now we're away from Queen's Park for 5 months, and all summer, yes, I'm out at events all the time, but I'm also meeting with constituents one-on-one. I'm meeting with local organizations that are advocating for certain things, and it's so awesome to be able to learn about all these things, because then I'm armed with even better local information to go back to Queen's Park and what I advocate for. So everything I do, whether it's in question period, committee, voting on legislation, it's always informed by what people in Nepean want.
Now tell me, something that a lot of people ask, especially because you're in the third party, and I will say, personally from my view, I would say the Liberal Party of Ontario in the legislature, I'd say is a very effective opposition party.
I agree.
I'd say, I don't want to offend my NDP viewers here, but I hear more from the Liberals on certain issues than I do from the NDP, who's the official opposition. On OSAP, I heard a lot of it from the Liberals. On a lot of things I've heard. So, like you said, small but mighty. But at the end of the day, you're an opposition MP. And a lot of the time that people measure success is by what have you been able to do. And you're able to do things, but different than if you were in the government, right? How do you measure success as an MPP, a new MPP, when somebody comes up to you? Because I'm sure you have the people that say, okay, tell me what you've done. How do you measure that? Because it's such a tricky balance.
Yeah.
Because you're out there, you're meeting with people, you're talking on the floor of the legislature. How do you measure success?
It's It's a good question. And so that's been part of my learning journey with how to be an MPP who is in opposition to a majority government, a government that can and will do whatever they want. So, of course, question period is very theatrical. Let's be real, right? It's important. Everything I'm asking is real. I actually care and would love an answer. Do I expect an answer? No, which is sad, but that is what it is. So I don't want to just be yelling into the void, right? I want to see tangible results, and the way that I've been able to do that is through a variety of ways, but particularly I've been really focused on building relationships with members of the government, with members from the NDP and the Greens. And when the cameras are off, and you can have those genuine, authentic relationships, like, people are pretty open-minded and wanting to help, right? And I think that that's where I've actually seen some success. So one thing that comes to mind is the DREO program, right? Now, I did that in an unconventional way where I wrote an open letter to Minister Flack and Dunlop, but it was so urgent I couldn't wait for the typical time it takes for them to get back to us, if they even do. So using an open letter and public pressure to get them to activate the DREO program and bring it to Nepean
During the recent floods.
During the recent Canada floods was good. And then we saw, oh no, they've only approved a sliver, leaving out Bell's Corners and a lot of other areas of Ottawa. So I put out another letter, and now they've agreed to reassess. I'm actually having a meeting tomorrow on it, getting briefed by the ministry. So there are ways to operate and advocate that are just beyond question period, right? To me, I look at question period as a way to try to hold them accountable, the for government accountable, but also it lets people know that they have a voice there. Like, the amount of messages that I get from nurses and education workers and parents and even young people in Nepean about what it is that I'm asking questions or debating, or statements that I'm giving, even though they know I'm in third party and I'm not a part of the government, just the fact that they have a voice there that is listening to them and bringing it there, I use that as a measure of success as well, because it gives people hope again. And that's been one of the greatest things about this role, is seeing people feel a little bit more hopeful in a world where that can feel really tough. And then, of course, some physical, tangible results will be great, right? I was really vocal on the bus attendance being cut from the Catholic board, and we got that reversed. The DREO program, I'm really hopeful that we will get the Barnesville interchange done before the next election.
Let's talk about it. So, because you keep bringing it up, and I remember, when the Premier announced it, I was at the Mayor's breakfast when he announced it, and it was in the budget a couple days before.
Talking a couple years ago.
And then, this was 23 or 24. I remember when it was announced. And, the funding has been allocated, but in terms of shovels in the ground, what is that? Where are we on that? What is that like?
It's frustrating. I mean, talk about red tape. Like, I don't understand why it's taking years to make this happen. And mind you, this was announced in 2018 by my predecessor, and then it was re-announced for the 2022 election. I remember when the Premier came down and they had the Barnesville interchange sign up, right? So this government talks a big game about getting things done. Well, we just want an interchange. It's very simple, right? However, I am hopeful. I am in constant communication with the Minister of Transportation, and I am hopeful it'll be done before the next election. They're in the process currently of doing the environmental studies and all that, and hopefully within a year or two we will see shovels in the ground.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of people are wondering about that, and a lot of my regular viewers who come to me to ask about what's happening in Barrhaven will be very happy to hear about that and to hear what's going on with that. Now, before I go on to the next segment, you mentioned developing relationships with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a big thing at Queen's Park, on Parliament Hill. What people see at question period, you know, that's their exposure to provincial politics or federal politics.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, you know, the occasional announcement, and they're like, everybody hates each other. What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
But then you actually go to Queen's Park or you go to Parliament Hill and you see Liberals and Conservatives after question period, when the cameras are off, walking across the floor and, you know, slapping each other on the back and laughing and having good conversations. What is that? You know, what's that like? What's that been like for you to actually see what happens when the cameras are off?
I think what's been nice about it is that now that I've been there for a year and a half, the Conservatives are seeing me in a bit of a more of a human light instead of just, you know, an opposition person who's criticizing them. And I think that being in this world, like, it's very unique, right? Like, there's only so many people who've ever been elected. So I think that there's a mutual respect in that regard about, like, okay, we're all in this, like, really crazy world. And so that there's that camaraderie there. But the other side to it as well is if I want to get things done for Nepean, I got to work with the government. They're the ones with the money and the power to make it happen. So I will work with them, right? I have voted with them on certain bills. I have voted against many of their bills. But I'm always willing to work together, you know, to put forward amendments, change legislation, so it can be as good as it can for Ontarians. Because if the government is doing well, then that's good for Ontario. So that's where I really don't care about partisanship. I just want us to get things done that are actually going to improve people's lives, because that's the job of government. And of course, I disagree with a lot of things that they do, and a lot of you know, scandals and controversies that have been kind of ravaging them lately. I wish we were at Queen's Park right now, because I'd be having a lot of fun in question period.
I'll come down and visit you when
please,
when we're both in Toronto.
Absolutely. I'll shout you out. We'll get you into Hansard.
I'm already in there twice.
I'll go for the third then.
Now, as we wrap up, I always like to end with a bit of, you know, inspiration, and looking at your shelf behind you. I always like looking at the shelves of people who I talk to. Obviously, all of my viewers know my crazy collection of books.
I've seen
on my
it.
back shelf. I have everybody under the sun, you know, every political person on my shelf. It's just a crazy collection. On your shelf behind you, you have, you know, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Justin Trudeau. But then you also have Brian Mulroney. You have Stephen Harper. You have a good mix. Mark Sutcliffe, who I have to get my book signed from. I told them last time, I said, 4 years you've been mayor. I've seen you for 4 years. I need you to get my book signed. But anyway, tell me a bit about who inspires you. Tell me a bit about your choice of books behind you, and who you draw upon as your inspiration as a politician, as somebody in politics, and just as somebody who observes the world around you.
That's a really good question. So I love reading about politics, because I did not start really paying attention to politics, and I'll admit this, until Trump. Because it showed me how important it is, right? Like, it can change like that. And of course, at the beginning, I was just like totally enthralled with the craziness that was Trump and his ascendance to winning in 2016, that very dark day in 2016. But then, you know, the change in government here in Ontario with Ford, and how that affected my life as a student nurse, as a young person who's trying to enter the healthcare system, how it impacted my friends and family. Whether, you know, you think it's positive or negative, that change has consequences. So because I really only know, like, Ontario history 2018 Ford onwards, I love reading about the past. I just finished this book by Steve Paikin on the former premiers.
We wouldn't know anything about Ontario history without Steve
Paikin. Right? I'm in the middle of reading a book about the Mike Harris years. Like, whew, there's a lot of lot of scandals that went on, right? It was interesting times, and you hear about it, from people that like lived through it. Like I remember the teachers' strike when I was a kid here in Barrhaven that was happening during that time, and those though don't learn from history are what's the
Due
term?
to repeat it,
Right?
yeah.
So I think it's really important just to learn, right? You learn good things, bad things, etc. So that's why I have a whole spectrum of books. And listen, not every government is not totally bad. Not every government is totally good. There's in between, and you got to learn from their mistakes. You got to learn from the things that worked. I'm really excited about, and I'll get back to your question. I'm going off on a mini tangent here. My private members bill that I'll be introducing, I was supposed to introduce in October, but now it's December because we're coming back late. And I won't say what it is yet, but I've looked to other countries to see how they do things, and we don't always have to start from scratch, right? We can look at other provinces, we can look at other countries, and try to shape policy and legislation that'll help Ontarians here based on successes of other provinces and countries. Again, right, always trying to learn. I don't have the answers, but I think that's an important quality. I can talk your ear off all day about healthcare. I'm pretty confident in that. But when it comes to other things, right, I'm an open book. Now, when it comes to, people who inspire me, some people might cringe at this answer, but AOC. And it's not that I necessarily agree with her policies all the time, but it's the way that she is just so bluntly herself, authentic and genuine, that it kind of cuts through a lot of your typical what you would expect from a politician. And I get that feedback a lot where it's like, oh, you're the same person like privately as you are publicly. And I think people truly want that authenticity in their leaders, right? They want to feel like you're a real human who is capable of making mistakes, but capable of owning up to it and being accountable as well. And then, of course, Adam Van Couverden is another huge inspiration of mine. Watching him win Milton back in 2019, it really influenced how I ran here, because I've never seen someone knock on so many doors and just work so hard to win that election. So that work ethic really influenced what I do here. Kathleen Wynne, another big inspiration of mine, first openly gay premier in this province. And again, you may disagree with her policies, but it was a massive change. It was a massive, very progressive for its time, and first women premier, right? So I just have a lot of respect for, the moves that she made, and, me being like a young gay person too, and seeing, oh, this is possible. And I never thought that I would see that in my life. Really motivated me and inspired me to pursue this.
Well, thank you for bringing all of those people up. I've done hundreds of interviews, different formats, but I always bring up that question of who inspires you. And it's a two-pronged question. Well, not related, but I always have my inspiration segment. My last question always is, and in every interview that I've done with a new person in 2021, I always ask for advice, because my base is young people, a lot, primarily young people in politics from across the political spectrum. And a lot of people are going to tune into this, I'm sure. And I always like to ask, what is one piece of advice? It doesn't necessarily need to be political advice, but your favorite piece of advice that you pass on to young people or anybody watching this show.
I'm so glad you asked this question. And so whenever I'm visiting high schools or talking to young people, I always share this piece of advice. It's more of a nurse piece of advice than anything, but nursing influences everything that I do in this world. But my advice to young people is that you need to take care of yourself, especially your mental health. and that involves things like putting the phone away when you're overwhelmed, focusing on things that bring you joy. This world is really crazy, and we are not meant to. People are not meant to have access to us 24/7, and they do, and it can be really overwhelming. So it's okay if you need to take a night to yourself and do nothing and watch terrible television. Like if what brings you joy is going to the gym, going outside for a run, hanging with your friends, eating good food, whatever it is, it's important to do it. Because if you can't recover and try to be at your best, then you can't give your best in whatever it is that you are passionate about and pursuing, right? Whether that's your education or career. And I feel very lucky that, when I grew up here in Barrhaven, so I'm born in 1990, so I did grow up before we had internet. Right? I went to school next to a farm. There was nothing here, right? We had to entertain ourselves and go out and actually physically interact with people. And I feel lucky to have had that because I think that was kind of the last normal childhood, if you will, before technology really took over. And there's so many great things about technology, but there's also a lot of not so great things, right? And, when I talk to young people and say, you can take a break from social media, they're like, I've never even thought of that. So whatever it is that brings you joy and helps kind of reduce the stress and stimuli in your life, I say do it. The other thing I like to say to young people is that whatever is stressing you out in this moment, I guarantee you in 10 years' time, it wouldn't bother you at all. Honestly, the older you get, the more you decide what you're going to take on when it comes to stress, when it comes to things that impact your mental health. And I so wish I could tell my high school self, like, do not worry about that. Don't stress about it. You'll get through it, honestly. And you control what you take on, and never forget that power.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Happy to add it to my bank of advice from some local elected and all sorts of people that have come onto
my
programs. And I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
Thank you for having me. So great to be able to talk to you. This conversation I think is a very important conversation, not only for the people of Nepean to watch, but generally for political watchers to see, what is the state of politics today and how are we moving forward. Mm-hmm. So thank you for this conversation. That's it for my questions. But on the VCalla Show, I always like to, give a final opportunity to the guest to say anything that they may want to bring up, the last word, anything we may not have covered, or just a final message from the guest. So over to you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me on, Vincent. I know it's taken us a while to get this film, but I'm so glad. And it's been so awesome getting to know you throughout this. I love, what you do, especially when it comes to the Barrhaven coverage. Before we started filming, I was telling you how I learn about stuff from you than I do from, the news and whatnot. So just thank you for all that you do. I love your passion for our community, and it's pretty cool to see the success that you and your company are really achieving. Final word would be, I'm going to be typical here, but get out and vote in every single election. We have a municipal election coming up in Ottawa. Well, everywhere in Ontario.
444 municipalities.
Yeah. But, get out and vote. Your voice matters, right? Municipal elections is so local, and that's where you can really make local change, right? We kind of have the inverse where more people vote federally, and then as you go down, you get less and less. But your voice matters. Young people, get out and vote. Millennials, Gen Zs, there's enough of us that we could literally control every election if we wanted to. But it's so important. And I think where your voice can really come in handy is inspiring others to vote, right? The people around you, make them feel empowered and make a thing about going out to vote. It usually only takes 10 minutes anyways. But it's so, so important to our democracy and making sure that we get good people elected.
Well, thank you for that. Always love a plug for civic engagement. It's the best thing that we can do, and, reshape the future of our city, our province, our country whenever we have the chance to vote. So thank you for bringing that up. Thank you all for watching this. I really appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. The VCalla Show is a VCalla production in association with CrossCut Digital Strategies. So until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.
Hey, thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you like this one, you can find more by subscribing to VCalla Productions on YouTube, following @VCalla Canada across all my social media platforms, and by visiting vincenzocalla.com, where you can also join my mailing list. So that's all for this video, and I will catch you in the next one.